Hi everyone, welcome to 10x Recruiters Masterclass. So this session is, very important to us because as recruiters, we've seen a lot of them talk about Boolean, but in 10x community, we've also seen a lot of people asking us about, how to go about Boolean in the right way and what are the tools that we can use, and all of different questions have come to us over these past few months. So what we thought is, since we've already done candidate outreach sessions and there are a lot of other sessions that we've done in the past, we thought we will do a specific session on Boolean as well. So who better than to talk about it than Sailesh, because he's been doing this Boolean search, candidate sourcing, all this for the past few years. And he's also the co-founder of NurtureBox, which is a recruitment tool that helps recruiters with the specific sourcing and recruitment challenges. So yeah, welcome Sailesh and welcome you all.
Yeah, thanks, Avi. Just to take a step back over in terms of how the industry has evolved, uh, it's quite crazy, right? Because I particularly feel that our community is underserved, which is just recruitment in general, and Boolean search is still relevant, right? I remember writing my first Boolean search string of like a couple of years back, and it still exists today, right? So. Um, it's a very powerful tool, but again, it's quite complex, right? I write Boolean strings almost every day, to close some of my roles. But yes, sourcing is still painful, and a lot of recruiters that I know firsthand are confused about Boolean search, and we still use Boolean strings to find candidates. Again, basics, but again, very important, right? To brush up fundamentals, right? So primarily there are three Boolean operators, and this whole concept of Boolean string or Boolean search is borrowed from the development community, right? So any developer that you speak to firsthand can share their experience, right? They use this in their functions, to write any logic, for any of the code that they push, right? But fundamentally it boils down to three different operators, right? And the basic ones are or operator, right, which is essentially either or, right, which is if it qualifies for either of the scenarios, right, your search is valid, right? And then comes the and operator, right, which is where if you have two different scenarios, right, you're looking at the intersection, right, which is it needs to qualify for both, right? Or rather, the search is going to pick up, uh, examples which qualify for both of the scenarios, right? Not is quite straightforward, right? Which is exactly the opposite, right? Which is if you're going to say not developers, right? So you're looking at a talent pool of candidates outside, developers, right? So just the exact opposite.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Again, just to to like shed some light and like show some examples. These are some potential uh, like Boolean strings, right? Which is, let's say you're hunting for a social or let's say a marketing manager with social media experience. This is how your query is going to look like, right? Let's say you're finding software engineers, but you're finding software engineers who have experience with either Java or Python, right? Then this is how your search string is going to look like, right? Which is you look for titles, you look for specific candidates with software engineer, and you find people who have experience in either Java or Python, right? So again, we'll talk a little bit about parenthesis, later. Uh, and then this is an example of not, right? Which is you're trying to exclude certain terms, right? Which is here, you're trying to find a data analyst who has SQL experience, but is not well versed with Excel. Tools that I use on a day-to-day basis, right? Now that we're exploding with AI, I find it quite helpful to use, ChatGPT, and a couple of other platforms. I'll come back to this Boolean string later, but again, this is a quick snapshot of how I run my search strings on ChatGPT, right? So again, quite simple, right? Like you just search for what you're looking for in like natural language, and again you need to feed it with some custom prompts. So again, what you're seeing here is just the last sentence, but essentially the prompt that you need to give to these LLM engines is to instruct it to create a Boolean string for specific platforms, and then it does the magic of generating the right Boolean string for you, right? Uh, Again, I'll quickly also spend some time about like one of the Boolean string generators that we have created at Notchbox, right? So let me quickly pull up my screen. Yeah, can you see my AI power tool over here?
Yeah, we can. If you can make it, a bit bigger, that be. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, like one of the reasons why we created this tool is we saw some gaps in the market, right? Which is generating Boolean strings is still complex, right? Like, to remember a lot of operators, you have to use the right parentheses, right? And with now AI exploding, right? I personally did not see any tools in the market apart from, of course, ChatGPT. But again, that had again the downside of you feeding some custom prompts so that it can generate a Boolean string. So we have created again. This is a freemium product, right? Like anyone can use this. It's available online. Over here, if you can also drop this link on the chat. It's a simple chat interface where you can talk to a bot in natural language and talk about some of your requirements or the open role that you're hiring for, and it does the magic of actually creating that Boolean string, right? So I'm going to take a couple of examples, right? So again, not some basic scenarios, but some complex scenarios in terms of how this tool can help, right? So let's say I'm hiring for an Android developer, right? Uh, Again, I don't know how to come up with an exhaustive Boolean string which can help make this hire for me, right? So this is how I'm probably going to chat with the bot, right? So I'm going to tell it that, hey, uh, can you help me with a Boolean string for an Android developer? I'm going to say to not the title or the title for the candidate can be lead Android or Android developer, right? It doesn't matter, right? Can you generate an exhaustive Boolean string which can show me all Android devs with different titles, right? So here again, I as a recruiter, I'm confused, right? Because searching for Android developers is quite hard, right? There are so many titles out there, right? So I'm giving this hard task of to the to the tool for it to figure out what are some similar titles that we can potentially target, right? For me to pull up a list of exhaustive uh, candidates, right? So again, this again generates a Boolean string for me, and it gives an explanation of what exactly is the string and like how did it generate, right? So again, it is smart enough to identify that, hey, there are a lot of candidates with different titles, so it pulls up Android developer, Android engineer, it pulls up Android programmer, and again, a couple of Android devs now are sitting on top of Kotlin, right? And it's also smart enough to identify that, again, Android studios again use native by a lot of Android devs, right? And it's trying to capture a lot of titles, right? So So now this gets, now this makes my task quite easy, right? So again, this is my LinkedIn recruiter screen, right? So again, oops, we did not copy it here. Yeah, so I'm going to come in and, put the, Boolean string that the platform was able to generate. And now this is going to give me an exhaustive list of Android developers that I'm, like likely to go after, right? So if I was to just type Android developer, right, my search results would have been probably even lesser, right? So now I'm looking at a wider, set of pool. So I would say whenever your search string involves multiple parts or multiple words, it's better to use quotes, right? Because it's much easier for the Boolean string to get confused. For example, let's say you're playing around with titles like developer or like designer, right? Like you might choose to not use quotes, but if you're using multi-part words, like for example product designer, right, it's always advisable to use quotes so that the string doesn't get confused. Of course you can use parentheses to avoid certain scenarios, but as a general rule I will suggest whenever you're using multi-part words to always like use quotes. And again, X-ray search is just a jargon for Boolean search on Google, right? Uh, and again, I'm not sure how many of you guys use these, techniques, but again, I thought this is very relevant, and I wanted to share some examples, right? So I have often found scenarios where I have searched for candidates on Google, right? And again, these are candidate profiles on LinkedIn and Dribble, right? But you can use your search engine to identify, relevant candidates, right? So I'm going to quickly, like share an example of a tool. Again, I love this tool, right? I use this almost every day. I have two tabs open, right? One is the NurtureBox Boolean generator that we built, and Recruit, right? It saves a lot of my time. So I'm going to do a quick demo, right? So let's say you are hunting for a marketing manager, someone who's based out of like San Francisco in the United States. Now this is how your experience would look like, right? Again, Ovia, if you can drop this link on the chat, right? So it's a very simple interface, right? So you input a couple of fields. So I'm looking for a marketing manager, right? And yes, I'm looking for someone in a specific location. Let's say I'm looking for someone with master's degree, right? So I'm on the LinkedIn tab, right? So I want to find profiles or candidates who are available on LinkedIn, right? So once I give these couple of like parameters, it generates a search URL for me, right? So, and again, if I click on open in Google, so what it automatically does is it starts to now identify marketing manager profiles in San Francisco, right? And again, you don't need LinkedIn for this, right? Like you're just using the power of Google search, and you're using like Boolean strings, to generate. Of course, the syntax and the language is a little bit different when compared to LinkedIn, right? But you have tools available like Recruit, which automates it for you, right? So now you're seeing a couple of marketing managers in San Francisco. I'm going to talk about a few operators that I find it very handy, right? Again, these are not much spoken in a lot of blogs. Again, it took me a couple of YouTube videos, and I had to do a couple of interviews with a couple of my friends in the community to understand this better, right? So I'm going to talk about four operators, right? So again, one is the use of parentheses, right? And again, parentheses is essentially what you're seeing here on the left hand side, right? So that is it is used to group keywords, right? And it is to ensure that the search engine interprets your query accurately, right? So imagine a scenario where you do not have the parenthesis, right? So where you just say Java or Python and machine learning, right? Now, uh, how would LinkedIn interpret this, right? Now, it's quite confusing, right? Like, are you looking for folks who have Java experience and either Python, or machine learning, right? Or are you referring to candidates who have either Java or Python experience with machine learning, right? So now this is where parenthesis comes in very handy, right? So when you introduce a parenthesis, right, what essentially happens is the operator that the parenthesis contains or entails, gets priority first, right? So when you put the parenthesis, right, it makes it much easier for a LinkedIn or a Google to understand that, hey, uh, I want you to do the or operation first, right? Followed by the and, right? So now this essentially means that, hey, I'm looking for folks with either Java or Python experience, and they need to also have machine learning, right? So again, use parentheses whenever it gets confusing, to group operators, and it essentially helps you to mark the precedence or the order in which the operators gets executed. Yeah, again, proximity operators, right? Again, something that I wanted to talk about today, right? So, again, I'll quickly jump into examples, but there are three relevant proximity operators that I use quite often, right? So, one is the near function, right? And when you use a query like this and you say, hey, find senior near one engineers, right? What you essentially mean is you're referring to the fact that, hey, find me all candidates, right, who have the word engineer mentioned within one word next to the senior, right? So this is essentially the X words that is referred to in the description, right? So what essentially happens is when you say A near XB, right, it essentially tries to find the keyword B within X words of A, right? So this is essentially going to throw me all search results, right, which has terms like senior engineer, right, which has terms like senior development engineer, right? But it is not gonna show me search results which has a couple of words more than one, between senior and engineer, right? Now, let's come to within, right? Now, the difference between, again, like near and within is almost similar, right? But there's just one fundamental difference, right? Within, essentially means that the order matters, right? Which is engineer cannot occur before, cybersecurity, right? But whereas in near, right, the order doesn't matter, right? B can happen before A or A can happen before B, right? So you're essentially enforcing a hard rule here when you use within, and the functionality is very similar, right? So it essentially tries to find this chosen keyword within X keywords from the primary keyword, right? But the only difference here being the order matters, right?
So it could be Android developer or lead developer Android. So if you use within, then
Correct.
the words can be shifted.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So now let's talk about sentence, right? So when you use the sentence function, right, it essentially pulls up all like results, right, in which the mentioned keywords occur in the same sentence, right? So again, let's follow the convention, right? So this is your primary keyword, right? And then you use the operator sentence followed by a list of keywords, right? So the sentence operator or the sentence function, right, it accepts a list of keywords, right? And when you mention a list of keywords, right, what happens is it essentially provides all results in which these keywords occur in the same sentence, right? So again, this is quite helpful when you're searching through LinkedIn descriptions where people have mentioned certain keywords as part of the same sentence, right? I particularly find this very helpful when I'm hiring for a few niche roles in finance, right? When I'm hiring for quant analysts, right? So uh, again, a couple of CA requirements also have very niche like use cases where I'm specifically hunting for, let's say, certain keywords or let's say certain certifications, right? So this is quite handy there, where you have to hunt for profiles where certain keywords have to occur in the same sentence.
So, so like an example, if you're looking for a content writer, then we will say content writer who also has experience in journalism or something like that, like who have like done their major in journalism or something like that.
Yeah,
That should appear on in that particular sentence.
correct.
So I'm assuming that the sentence refer to the summaries and headlines of the candidates on the LinkedIn.
Yes,
Right?
yes, that's correct. Yeah, so by a sentence, yeah, again, good you clarified this, okay, right? By a sentence, it doesn't mean a typical sentence in English, right? Which marks the end of a full stop, right? It marks a section or a portion of text. Right? So if you run this on LinkedIn, if it's able to find it in a section or a summary of the text, it will start like throwing these results.
Wonderful. So also this sort of okay, makes sense. Brings down the reason. Yeah, like, you don't have to enter a lot of different, saying that okay, it has to be closer to this. The prompts can be very short.
Right.
These operators.
Yeah.
Got it.
So here you don't care about the proximity, right? As long as it occurs as part of the same sentence, you're okay.
Makes sense. Got it. Okay. We'll move on to the next. Okay, wildcards.
Yeah. So wildcards, again, quite handy, right? So I'm going to talk about examples, but again, it's a simple operator, asterisk, wherever you see an asterisk, do not get confused. It's just a wildcard operator. So I'm going to do some live examples.
No. Okay, got it.
Right. Yeah. So again, like let me run through, like 3 examples, right? So again, a plain, vanilla query, right, where I'm talking about either a designer or a developer, right? So again, this is going to pull a list of profiles with either of these titles, right? Now, if you want to expand on the search and make it a little more smarter, right, what you can do is you can include an asterisk, right? And what this essentially means is any number of characters or words can follow this primary keyword that's mentioned here, right? So this means now you're going to land on search results, which is not just limited to design, but it's going to include one or more character that follows this primary keyword, right? So we're looking at designers, design lead, right? All these search results will qualify, right? Again, very similar for, develop, right? So now it is no longer going to show only profiles which have either of these terms. You're looking at a much broader set, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, again, just a quick example, right? So let's say you are using graphic star, right? So now this is going to include graphic designers, graphic lead designers. It's going to include graphic experts, right? So yeah, essentially the way to interpret asterisks is very simple, right? One or more characters. Again, by a character, it could mean even a space, right? So essentially anything that follows after that would qualify, as a search string.
I believe this will be useful for cases where we are not particularly sure of the roles that we are looking at. Say like the expert, like many of the candidates do have these terms like guru, experts, and all on their LinkedIn. So this will also help finding those candidates.
Yeah.
Right. Makes sense. So both, and also like as I'm saying this actually reduces the use of parentheses as well. You don't have to use multiple ands and ors and to keep making your prompt bigger and bigger with parentheses. Rather, you can just use these little operators to actually keep it concise and yet get the same result.
That's actually a good point of view, right? So again, your search strings do not have to be exhaustive, right? Instead of you having to write designer or design or designer or design lead or design manager, you can just say design star, right? So it covers your broader set of use cases, and yeah, it does help you condense your search string and makes it easy, to construct better Boolean strings.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So the fourth operator that I'm going to talk about is again fuzzy match, right? And again, this is a real time saver, right? Again, this accounts for typos or variations in spellings, right? But again, more than spelling mistake, I'm going to talk about some specific use cases where this is very helpful, right? So let's imagine you're searching for a full stack developer, right? Now, this is an example where the spelling for a full stack developer can differ, right? So, again, you're looking at full hyphen stack developer or full space stack developer or full stack in just one word, right? Without a space, right? So, now this is where fuzzy really helps in, right? Which is if you use the tilde operator after the quotes, right? Again, just to go back to like one of the questions from the audience, right? Yeah, so you always have to use a quote on the primary keyword when you're applying these operators, right? So it's mandatory, right? Like if you do not use the operator, I'm sorry, if you do not use quotes on let's say a word, the operator only works on the last word, right? So for example, when you say full stack developer without a quote and then the tilde, right? The tilde would apply only to developer, right? So if you want the operator to work on the entire string, you will have to use quotes, right? So like that's also like one of the use cases, right? So again, when you use an operator like this, what essentially happens is fuzzy match starts working, and you're now looking at full stack developers irrespective of a hyphen or a space or any kind of spelling mistakes that are part of the like the search query. Yeah. So again, another use case is again a couple of technical frameworks, right? I've seen a couple of folks write React.js. A couple of people say it React Space.js, right? So again, it works like flawlessly across like a lot of use cases, right? So yeah, give it a shot and play around with it.
I see that for Node.js, it's also picking up Node.js and Node.js without a full stop and everything. That's actually very intuitive. You don't have to be too mindful when you're entering these prompts.
Yeah, correct. Especially, I would say for a lot of technical terms, it may not be related to IT or engineering, but any specific technical term could be something niche to a healthcare or a certification, etc. You can always use fuzzy. It would account for typos also, right? So it gives the benefit. So let's say even if the candidate makes a typo in their description or in their LinkedIn profile, it would still pull up those profiles.
Makes sense. Got it.
A quick, again, this is a surprise for the audience, right? So we've also created 2 free resources, right? So again, you'll have it in your inbox. Again, we've not yet shown this to the world, and this is an exclusive copy for the audience. Who have signed up for this webinar, right? So again, 2 useful resources which are extremely valuable, right? So one is again a crash course, right? And again, it's a tutor-led video course, right? And again, unlike let's say a lengthy video course, like these are bite-sized videos, right, that you can circulate to your team. And again, I got an opportunity to talk about a couple of examples and a couple of operators, but this dives a lot more deeper, right? And it talks about multiple other like real world scenarios or use cases where you can use certain advanced operators, and this is not targeted at any particular skill set, right? So it starts from the basics and helps the recruiter fully understand how to generate a Boolean string from scratch, right? And yeah, anyone who's a beginner will find this extremely helpful. Anyone who's an intermediate and who wants to learn more about advanced Boolean operators or rather generate complex Boolean strings will also be able to find value in this course. And just to parallel that, we also have written a complete book which talks about Boolean search strings. And again, this has multiple examples and use cases where we talk about specific use cases with pre-built Boolean strings, right, for certain industries that are available in the ebook that are like that can be like used like immediately, right? So again, yeah, two free resources that we're circulating. Again, would love to hear your thoughts after you've seen these resources. In the interest of the community, we're also building AI sourcing, right? So again, the problem that we're trying to solve is how do we make sourcing less painful, right? So we have built a sourcing platform which uses AI to auto source candidates on behalf of the recruiters, right? And what this essentially means is the platform will start sourcing candidates for you with the job description when you're sleeping, right? So again, this means, so we also have an exhaustive database of around 800 million candidates, and sourcing is still a painful problem, right? So what we have done is we have built a robust model which can understand job description and surface the best relevant candidates for your open role, right? So this means no more playing around with complex Boolean filters, no more trying to find the relevant candidates and spending hours on LinkedIn Recruiter, right? You can just come into the platform, upload the JD, right? Again, I don't have a lot of time, but I'll quickly pull up one screen, right? So this is how the platform looks like, right? So this is our candidate database where, of course, you can enter a couple of filters, but we also have a AI assisted search, right? So again, here within the platform, you can start talking to our platform to find relevant candidates, right? So you can say, hey, help me find product managers with B2B experience in San Francisco who have come from the pharmaceuticals industry and have worked in FANG-like companies, etc., with, let's say, minimum 2 years of experience, right? And the platform is smart enough to find the relevant Boolean strings and apply those filters, and it will start showing you relevant candidates, right? Or what you can do is you can upload a job description, right? And yeah, the platform would just read the JD, do the magic of understanding the JD, and surface and start finding relevant candidates, right? And again, all these candidates are stack ranked, or rather, I would call it as the AI ranking it for you in terms of relevance, to quickly put up like a list of profiles, right? So,
when you say profiles, they are not particular to LinkedIn, rather, it's just candidate profiles and their social presence will also be included. Covered.
Yeah, so it's not limited to LinkedIn, right? We're looking at a much broader data set, and by profiles, I mean everything, right? In terms of where they've worked at, what's their current experience. We also help with enrichment, right? So we also have data about the candidates, personal emails and their cell phone numbers, like their direct cell phone numbers, right? So again, all within the platform, right? You upload the JD, it will start like surfacing like top A plus talent, or rather like high pedigree talent, which are like relevant for these roles. And you can quickly pick up your phones and call these candidates because we also provide contact data, right? And yeah, it's an end-to-end solution, but the primary problem that we're trying to solve is helping making sourcing faster, right? Typically, what takes about 5 hours every day should now start taking about a couple of minutes.